The following program deals with a controversial subject. The theories expressed are not the only possible interpretation. Viewers are invited to make a judgment based on all available information.
This is your captain speaking. We are beginning our descent into madness.
Open your mind.
And we are back to another edition of West of the Rockies. I'm Frank. Thank you guys for sticking around. I know it's late, but tonight we're going to make it worth your while, as opposed to any other night, I suppose.
Well, it's only half worth your while.
I know, right? Well, let me turn that guy off. Trying to get those last-minute tweets out there.
Who you texting?
Let's see. No, well, we're getting a couple of
tell me
retweets. We're getting a couple of retweets for tonight's show, which is great because tonight we have a really, really cool show. We've been gone for a few weeks. We were in a bit of a adventure, I would call it. It wasn't a vacation. It definitely wasn't.
I was going to say, I'm still not sure. Adventure has kind of positive connotations.
It was a trek. It was an odyssey. It was a voyage. I don't know. I can keep going.
A break.
Of sorts. But
change of scenery.
We're back tonight. And actually, I think out of all this time that we've been gone, we have at least one thing that we're going to post about on the website, which is I actually got hit up about some pictures we posted because we visited the Paris catacombs. We got some cool pictures, and it's a really interesting place. So we're going to be posting some of that, some of those pictures, and a bit of how that was because it was really interesting. Mm-hmm. But tonight we have an interview, which actually, for me, it's quite huge. As people know,
that's what she said.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, had to.
As
started somewhere.
As people know, growing up with my father's books, one of the books that was very prominent, or at least an author that was very prominent in my dad's collection of books, was Erich von Daniken. And obviously, his famous book, Chariots of the Gods, with a question mark at the end. So it's Chariots of the Gods, I suppose is the proper way. And a very popular documentary, I believe it came out in the 70s, based on this book by Erich von Daniken. And that was kind of how I got into UFOs and the theories that humans had been visited by extraterrestrials in the past, and we see what a lot of us consider to be evidence of this contact in, the Egyptians' hieroglyphics and other similar ancient civilizations. And obviously, Mr. von Daniken has been featured on countless documentaries, TV shows, TV specials, etc., on this topic. But let me stop rambling. I'm going to hand over the mic to Genevieve. Genevieve, if you would be so kind to do the introduction here.
All right, well, here's a little summary about Erich von Daniken, as edited from his website, which is Daniken.com, Daniken. Von Daniken was born in 1935 in Switzerland and was educated at the College Saint-Michel in Fribourg, where he spent much of his time studying ancient holy writings. It was while working as the managing director of a hotel that he wrote his first book, Chariots of the Gods, which was an immediate bestseller in the United States, Germany, and later on in 38 other countries. In the US, Erich won instant fame as a result of the television special In Search of Ancient Astronauts, based upon his first book. In 1993, the German television station Sat.1 started a 25-part TV series with and by Erich von Daniken entitled Pathways of the Gods. In 1996, TV company ABC/Kane produced a 1-hour special filmed all over the world entitled Chariots of the Gods, The Mysteries Continue, one of his most famous documentaries. Less than a year later, the same company produced another documentary with Erich, which was aired on the Discovery Channel, as well as RTL in Germany, to no less than 7.7 million viewers in Germany alone. Erich's books have been translated into 32 languages. They've sold 65 million copies worldwide, and so far 2 full-length documentary films have been produced based on his books, namely obviously Chariots of the Gods and Messages of the Gods, and of the more than 3,000 lectures which he has given in 25 countries, over 500 were presented at universities, fluent in 4 languages. He is an avid researcher and a compulsive traveler, averaging 100,000 miles each year to remote spots of the Earth. This enables him, obviously, to closely examine the phenomena about which he writes. And today, Erich lives in a small mountain village of Beatenberg in Switzerland. In 2003, the Mysteries of the World theme park, so an entire theme park designed by Erich, was opened in Switzerland, serving as a platform for the presentation and research of the mysteries of the world, including paleo-SETI, the so-called ancient astronaut theory. In 1998, Erich von Daniken co-founded the Archaeology, Astronautics and SETI Research Association, AASRA, which publishes the English journal Legendary Times, reporting about the latest research in the paleo-SETI field. Erich married his wife, Elisabeth Skaya, in 1960, and has 1 daughter, Cornelia, as well as 2 grandchildren. He's also a hobby chef and a lover of Bordeaux wines, so according to his website. So one more little bit of trivia. Did you know that Ridley Scott said that his film Prometheus is related to some of Däniken's ideas regarding early human civilization?
Wow.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean...
That was a summary. That was me trying to break things down and cut things out.
Well,
so sorry about that.
As people know, he lives in Switzerland.
Mm-hmm. I think Beatenberg.
Yeah.
I think he still lives there, and that's where he actually called us from.
Yeah, so we had to make the interview off air, but we're going to air the whole interview here for everyone. We actually had this interview a few days before the Contact in the Desert conference, which just took place. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, I'm sure you heard about it. It got quite a bit of press this year because of the number of speakers that were there, including...
We were not just slightly annoyed that we couldn't be there.
Yeah, again, conflicting schedules, I suppose. But nonetheless, we got to interview Mr. von Daniken, and we're going to go ahead and roll the interview here. This is our interview with Erich von Daniken, and honestly, it was a fascinating interview. You're going to hear us talk about not just ancient aliens, but current aliens for us.
And even for anyone that hasn't read any of his stuff or seen any of his stuff, I think it's a good overview of generally what he talks about, as well as a couple of, nitty-grittier details. Yeah, and definitely want to send a quick shout-out before we start to everybody that's tuning in tonight. I see Professor Madness and Mr. Tony Merlo are there in the chat. To quote Professor Madness, now they're back, our lives can get back to normal. Including ours. Yeah, including ours, that's what I was All right, guys, here we go. Erich von Daniken, enjoy, and we're going to be back right after. Hello, Mr. von Daniken. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I'm talking.
And we're really excited to have you on the show.
Yes, everything is okay. The only problem is my mother language is German. My second language is French. Sometimes I have problems to express myself. But you will help me out, okay?
Ich kann auch ein bisschen helfen. Ich spreche auch Deutsch.
Dankeschön, dankeschön.
Okay, unfortunately, I don't speak German. Otherwise, I would impress you with my German skills. But,
okay.
Mr. von Daniken, thank you so much for joining us. It's really an honor to have you on our show.
Well, it's a pleasure from my side to be with your show.
Now, I am one of the many people that grew up with your books. My dad actually is the one that introduced me to your books at a very early age. So this is a very special interview, and I look forward to discussing some interesting things that I know you focus a lot on biblical accounts, Abraham, Elijah, Ezekiel. What story in the Bible pushed you to see these accounts as something other than God, instead extraterrestrials?
You see, I was educated as a strict Catholic in Switzerland in a boarding school. And the boarding school was led by Jesuits. So we had to translate some parts of the Bible from Greek to Latin and Latin to German. and I am a deep believer in God, and I was a deep believer in God when I was a boy. But my belief in God had to be omnipotent. That means God would never need a vehicle in which to move around from point A to point B, or God would never make a mistake, etc. Now, while making these translations, I realized that in some cases, the God in the Bible made mistakes, and he used some vehicles to move around. So I was simply curious, and I asked myself if other religions have similar stories. So that was the point when it all started, and it ended with Chariots of the Gods.
That is really fascinating because obviously a lot of people have made the point to distance the Bible from anything extraterrestrial or, anything that would go against the belief of God. In one of your presentations last year at Contact in the Desert, which you will be attending again as a speaker this year, you said that if you could travel back in time and talk to anyone or travel to any period of time, you would like to have a talk with Enoch.
Yes, perfect.
Can you tell me why specifically Enoch?
Enoch, according to the Bible, was the seventh patriarch before the great flood. Now, in the Bible, you read only about 3 phrases concerning Enoch. You just learn that he was the seventh patriarch and that he went to the heaven with God. That's all what you read in the Bible. But 170 years ago, in an old convent in Ethiopia, there was a book found, the Book of Enoch. The Book of Enoch then was translated from Ethiopian language into English, and from English later into German. And now when you read Enoch, this Ethiopian Enoch book, you are really, really amazed, because he tells stories in the first person. That means as an eyewitness. He said it was evening. The whole community of the village wanted to sleep, but then they hear the noise in the sky, and they saw a light coming down, and everyone was afraid and ran away. And 2 beings, in the book of Enoch, they speak about 2 angels, came out of a light, and they came close to it. Now, Enoch was 12 years at that time. He said, I was 12 years old, and he did not run away. But when these 2 beings came close to him, he was afraid too, and he fell on the ground. Of a sudden, someone of these 2 angels or beings spoke to Enoch and said, don't be afraid, human, don't be afraid. So they help him to stand up. Then Enoch explains everything what happened. He goes with them to so-called heaven. He sees the earth from above. He goes in a gigantic spaceship. Well, I use the word spaceship. Enoch did not have a word like spaceship. Enoch says there was something like cities in the sky. Doors opened and closed, and he crossed gardens with different flowers and wheat, which he never saw. He finally comes to a gigantic round table, and there was a throne, and on the throne the Lord was sitting, etc., etc. Now, 170 years ago and 150 years ago, all this was translated in a religious sense. So, 2 angels came down, Enoch was taken up to the heaven, he stands before the throne of the Almighty God. But in our time, we have other possibilities of translations, and these translations are made by scientists, not just by Erich von Daniken. In the meantime, you say, it was not 2 angels who came down, it was 2 extraterrestrials. Enoch did not went into heaven. Enoch went up into the sky. He did not enter heaven, he entered into a mother spaceship, etc. Wow. He does not stand before the throne of the Almighty God. He is simply standing for the chair of the commander in the spaceship. So, etc. Enoch, in a modern view, makes absolute sense. In an old view, Enoch is absolutely senseless.
Would you say that these extraterrestrials, what was their purpose, I should ask, appearing to these men that we see in the Bible, were they impersonating the God that they believe in, or was there confusion, I guess?
Miscommunication.
Yeah.
Well, you see, I have the knowledge of different other old books, for example, in India and so on. Now, these extraterrestrials, they were looking similar to humans, and they were there with the body. And in some cases, the humans asked them, where do you come from? And they always say, we came from another solar system. They never said, for example, we came from another continent, like Atlantis or so. They always pointed to the sky. Now, but by saying this, you have a lot of confusion. Why should extraterrestrials look human? But there is an explanation of it. And where is God, the real God? Look, accept just for a second that my position would be right. That means, all right, we were visited by beings from outer space. So the next question must be, where did they come from? Now you can say they have been visited themselves by another solar system, etc. You can go on for millions of years. Finally, you arrive to a starting point where in all respect with religion, you have to confess and to say, here is God. Here is God, and you never lose God when you work with extraterrestrials.
Oh, wow.
I am one of these people who always, every day pray. I pray every evening.
That's great. And honestly, I mean, this is really interesting to see the Bible through this new lens. Something you said in regards to this and one of your lectures was that this is kind of a new interpretation. You said that we do not lose religion and we do not lose God by seeing things in this way.
Definitely not.
I find that really, really interesting. One of the things I remember reading the description of Ezekiel's vision of, I know you consider a spaceship or an aircraft, and it seems to describe a jet propulsion type of craft.
Yeah.
And this was back in biblical times, and it was very similar to the technology that we have today. So from your research, are these extraterrestrials, do they evolve? Their technology gets better? Is that why we see these more advanced aircraft in recent years, the UFOs of contemporary times?
Yeah. You see, concerning the Ezekiel case, Ezekiel describes a vehicle which comes down, and Ezekiel describes it as the splendorness of the Lord. He believes in the beginning that it is God. And then later, he describes all the details, like the wheels. He describes the wings. He describes the noise. He compares the noise with the thundering of a waterfall, and so on. And here I start with my doubts. In religious education, I was told that Ezekiel simply had a vision. He saw God sitting on his throne. But again, here God would use a vehicle to move around. And according to my belief, God does not need a vehicle. So what was the really meaning of it? Now, in our modern translation, we have come out to a sort of, you would call it space shuttle. In orbit, we had a gigantic mother spaceship. And from this mother spaceship, smaller vehicles have come down to Earth. Now, a NASA engineer, Mr. Joseph Blumrich, in his time, that's 20 years ago, he reconstructed the so-called visions of Ezekiel with modern technology. And he came to the conclusion that the technology of the extraterrestrials was only about 20 years ahead of our technology.
Wow.
So they were not so far away from us.
Wow.
Although I guess in modern times, 20 years could be considered a lot because of how fast people can move in that time nowadays, I guess.
Oh, yes, definitely.
One of the questions that I wanted to ask you is, in the Old Testament, we find a lot of accounts that would show some kind of advanced craft and encounters with some extraordinary beings. Have you found through your research anything that would indicate a similar type of encounter in the New Testament writings?
No. You see, the New Testament, this is the story of Jesus Christ. And this took place more or less 2,000 years from now. But the Jesus Christ story has nothing to do with these extraterrestrials. The extraterrestrials were thousands of years before Jesus Christ. That's a different thing. You see, in the ancient Testament, in the Bible, we find the God who descends on the holy mountain with smoke, fire, trembling, loud noise. In the Bible, even you say, and the mountain was burning like a furnace. Now, I have the same description in old India. There in the 5th book of the Mahabharata, a similar situation is described. Some vehicle descend on the planet, again with smoke, fire, loud noise, trembling, etc. The same thing happens in Tibet. The same thing happens in Colombia, where an Indian tribe live called the Kogo. And we know in the meantime their mythology. So these are repetitions all over the world. It's not only in the Old Testament, in our Bible. That's why I suggest they were really extraterrestrials with their body. They were here. And in orbit we had a spaceship, because some of the humans were taken up to the spaceship.
Oh, wow.
And when they came back, they described what they saw up there. Enoch was one of them, by the way. Abraham too, he was up there too.
Speaking of Enoch, what are your thoughts on the book of Enoch? I know that religious institutions and systems of faith don't particularly like the book of Enoch. They consider it an apocryphal book. Do you think that there is valuable and accurate information in that book? What are your thoughts on the book of Enoch?
Yes, a lot of things is valuable and accurate, and you can explain it perfectly with the modern view. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, many parts of the book of Enoch you cannot use. It's just religion. You see, 160, 170 years ago, when Enoch was translated for the first time, these professors in language which translated Enoch, they knew nothing about aircraft. At their time, there were no aircraft. Of course, nothing about space travel, etc. So they translated everything in a religious form, because they could not understand the real technological meaning behind it. So today, when you read Enoch, half of it I can throw away, or I can do nothing with it. The other half makes sense, is logical. For example, one of these extraterrestrials, Enoch calls it not extraterrestrials, he calls it the guardians of the sky. He teaches Enoch in astronomy. He explains them why the moon is sometimes full moon and half moon, and then it disappears. Mm-hmm. He explains them, for example, our calendar. He says, you see this bright shining light, you humans, you call it sun. But all the other lights you see up there in the sky are also suns. And around your sun, your planet is revolving. And he explains your planet is revolving around the sun 365 days, because they have hours. You see, we have every 4 years a leap year. Mm-hmm. Leap year, Schaltjahr. So this is astronomical knowledge. These parts of the book of Enoch you can use perfectly. It's science. They were teachers. Many other parts you can do nothing with it. We don't understand it.
Wow. And this is information years and years before Copernicus and the, solar-centric model.
Yes, that was before the Great Flood. Mm-hmm. These people, Enoch, they were Stone Age people.
Yeah, no, it's incredible, the things that are still left behind, and yet a lot of people completely overlook the fact that those people shouldn't have it, not that technology.
Exactly. Neither their technology, neither the knowledge. Mm-hmm. We have, for example, in Old Sumer, they were writing in cuneiform writings. Now, in Germany, we have a professor of Sumerology. His name is Professor Dr. Burgard. And he, for the first time now, translated some of the old Sumerian tablets with our new knowledge. Okay. And he told me, Eric, this is incredible. Now it makes perfect sense. Oh, wow. In the past 100 years, we always look at it in a religious or psychological way. But these are facts. We don't have to look for psychology or for religion. It makes sense. The time has changed. We live in another time.
And another thing that we read about in the book of Enoch is the fallen angels mating pretty much with women here on Earth. And can you tell us a little bit about that? Because a lot of people think that the fallen angels are extraterrestrials and created this kind of mixed, hybrid race.
Yeah, you see, Enoch was up there. He learned the language of the extraterrestrials. Mm-hmm. He was there in the so-called sky, the mother spaceship, for many decades, not only for 2 or 3 years. Oh, wow. And then he realizes that some of these so-called angels, in reality extraterrestrials, they had sex with beautiful humans. This is clearly written down in the book of Enoch. Enoch even gives the name of these extraterrestrials who had sex with humans. Now you can say, this is all nonsense. Why should extraterrestrials have sex with humans? And how is this practical possible? They probably don't have the same sexual apparatus as we have. But just go and read the Bible. First book of Moses 1:6. There you find the same story. There you read, but when the sons of God, sometimes the fallen angels, it depends on the traditions, saw that the daughters of men were beauty, they took them to wife. So all these translations exist. By the way, in old Tibetan and Japanese book also, there was sex between extraterrestrials and humans. That means that the extraterrestrials must have had a corpus, a corp like our, a humanistic,
a body,
a body like our. And this again makes sense, but the story is too complicated to explain it on the phone here. I must do this in Joshua Tree.
And speaking of Joshua Tree, we were there last year, and we had the pleasure of sitting in for one of your lectures. In that lecture, you were talking about the book of Ezekiel, where he records the exact measurements of the splendors of God. And you said, or you shared a very interesting story that I would ask you to share with us today, if you can, about the German engineer that took Ezekiel's measurements, and then they measured them with a temple.
Yeah. You see, in the first part of the book of Ezekiel, he describes the vehicle, the so-called splendorness of God. And as I said before, the leading NASA engineer at that time, Mr. Joseph Blumrich, reconstructed the vehicle. Now, in the second part, from chapter 40 of Ezekiel, Ezekiel is brought up to a very, very high mountain, and he sees something like a temple. He doesn't say it is a temple, so it's a building for the gods. And there is one of these glittering men, and he gives Ezekiel a device of measurement. And he orders him, Ezekiel should measure this temple, everything. Ezekiel even has the courage to ask back, why? Why should I make these measurements? And the other answers to him, well, that's the reason why we brought you here. So Ezekiel makes the measurement, length, large, high, every step, everything. You can read all this in the Bible. Just take Ezekiel chapter 14 and so on. And these measurements were taken by a German engineer, Dr. Hermann Bayer, and he took every measurement correctly. He simply wanted with his team to find out, is this just imagination, a vision, or is this a real building? And he reconstructed the building. Now, I brought these two men, Mr. Bayer, the engineer from Germany, together with the NASA man, Blumrich, from the United States. And the spaceship, the so-called Splendorness, fit perfectly into the so-called temple. The temple was nothing else than the basic place to repair the mother, not the mother spaceship, the vehicle, the Vimana. You would call it space shuttle today.
Yeah.
So all this, by the way, I will repeat this because I have new measurements. It's very, very fascinating.
Oh, that's pretty exciting.
Incredible, yeah.
Now, let me ask you this, because when I talk to people about UFOs and aliens, and then, we bring the Bible into the conversation, it's almost like the camp splits into two. The people that are open to the idea of UFOs and extraterrestrials in the Bible, and people who believe that they were nothing more than the fallen angels, and that these are the extraterrestrials that they were seeing. They were actually fallen angels. How do you see these? Do you take one of these sides?
What is a fallen angel? You see, I was educated as a Catholic, and they told me in school, well, Eric, you will grow up now as a young man and then as a man, and you must live always in a fair way. You must harm no one. You must kill nobody. You must do no harm to nobody. And when you die, you come to heaven. And heaven is the place where we are absolutely close to the Almighty God. Heaven is the place of happiness. In heaven you have the angels. But then, even in our own religion, Jewish and Christian religion, you learn that at one time in the deep past, there was a fight in heaven. There was an archangel called Lucifer. And Lucifer, with his disciples, went before the throne of the Almighty God and said, "We don't serve you anymore." And then the Almighty God asked the help of the archangel Michael. And Michael threw out Lucifer from heaven. And this was the beginning of the devil. That's what we are told in school. But if heaven is the place of absolute happiness, because you are close to God, then an opposition is impossible. It is not possible to have an opposition against God when you are happy. So all this was not taken place in heaven. It has nothing to do with the real Almighty God. It was simply a war in space. And the so-called fallen angels are simply extraterrestrials. They were mutineers. They were fighting against the commander in spacecraft. So it's all complicated, but today it makes an absolute sense. Time has changed.
One of the things that you also talk about in one of your lectures is the mixed creatures, and you make a very interesting point in saying that evolution wouldn't make something mixed creature like a sphinx possible, that it had to be something that could be done by way of genetic or artificial genetic engineering. Why would extraterrestrials or aliens make these type of creatures?
In my opinion, we had first a mother spaceship. Maybe this mother spaceship was 100 or 200 years on the way. Before they saw our planet, the planet was similar to their own home planet, not too close to the sun, not too far away. So it was the real distance and the real temperature. So they orbited our planet. They descended to our planet with smaller spacecraft. Today we would call it Vimanas or space shuttles. Now, an extraterrestrial race, they know, of course, different planets. There are planets which are closer to the sun than our Earth, so it might be much hotter there. There are planets which are farther away. It might be colder. There are planets which are bigger, so you need more muscles to survive on this planet, etc., etc. Now these extraterrestrials are on the planet Earth, and they look at our animals, and they see, for example, a lion, and they see that the lion is very, very strong. He has strong muscles. And then they see, for example, another animal which is quite more intelligent than the lion, but is not so strong as the lion. And now they say to themselves, why don't we use the genetic material of these two elements, these two animals on Earth, and create a new one for another world? A world which is hotter or colder, or the gravity is different, etc. And they did it. They created so-called mixed creatures. Every museum in the world, at least in the East, in the Far East, in Egypt, you see sculptures of mixed creatures. You have writers in antiquity, for example, Herodotus, Diodor of Sicily, Plutarch. They all wrote about these mixed creatures. Eusebius was one of the bishops of Caesarea, and Eusebius, he wrote 1.5 pages of these mixed creatures, and he says the gods, the so-called gods, made them. They made them not by coincidence, because they wanted to do it. They needed new animals for other planets.
And could I ask, what is the purpose of having these new types of animals on other planets? Are they there to serve? Are they there as an experiment? What's the purpose?
Well, it was an experiment because on other planets you have other temperatures or other gravity. So you need other forms of life than on our planet. That was the purpose. You know, on a planet which is bigger than the planet Earth, a planet, for example, like our planet Jupiter, Jupiter is a giant. If we humans would go to Jupiter, we would be dead immediately because of the force of gravity.
Yeah.
It's too strong for us. So if we want an animal to survive on Jupiter, we have to create a new animal which can survive on Jupiter. So it needs complete different muscles, a different system of breathing, etc.
And where would they take it from there? Would they stand back and watch these animals evolve, or would they use them?
They just created on Earth these animals. Now, when they left the planet Earth again, just imagine there is a troop of ethnologists like our ethnologists. Ethnologists, they visit different tribes, they learn a few language, they help a little with advice, and then they disappear one day with the promise to return in the far future. Now, in the meantime, while they were on Earth, they have created some of these mixed creatures. Now, you do not have to take these mixed creatures on board of your spaceship. All what you need is a few milligrams of DNA. That's all. You don't need to take the animal with us. That's why on Earth we find the broken bones of these mixed creatures.
And where are the broken bones found?
Well, some of them definitely in Egypt, in the so-called Serapheum. Serapheum is beneath the Earth in Saqqara. It was now for 20 years closed to the tourists. In the meantime, since about a few months, the tourists can enter there again. Now you see in the Serapheum, you see the most gigantic sarcophaguses which you have ever seen on Earth. When these sarcophaguses were found, in the beginning, the archaeologists believed, well, these sarcophaguses are made for the holy animals, the holy bull. But there was no bull in there. In every sarcophagus, they found broken bones of different animals of different kinds. Some of the animals, they could not find out what it was because it was a mixed creature.
Wow. And I know that in one of your lectures, you actually show a picture of these of one of these sarcophagus.
Yeah, that's in Egypt. They are gigantic, absolutely superb.
It was totally mind blowing to see you standing next to these things and see how large they were. Now, one of the things that you said is when they left, when the extraterrestrials left, that humans were afraid of these mixed creatures and they were not allowed to kill them. Did they just not kill them out of fear, or that someone just said you're not allowed to touch them?
See, in India, still today, the cow is a holy creature. Right. The Indians do not kill cows. Now, thousands of years in the past, the extraterrestrials created some of these mixed creatures. One of them was known in Old Egypt as the Apis bull. So in Old Egypt, you had different bulls. You had normal bulls as we know them, and you had a special bull was called the Apis bull. Now, the old historians, they write that Apis was not created on a normal way by a sexual act on this planet. The gods created and made Apis. Now, Apis grew up, let's say, from a small animal to a strong animal. And the gods said to the humans, you are not allowed to kill this animal. It's our animal. It belongs to us. We want to observe how it's growing up. You are not allowed to kill it, to eat it, to destroy it, whatever. So it becomes a holy animal for the humans. One day the gods disappeared and the animal was still here. As I said before, all what they took on board was a little DNA, but the animal was still here. So the humans were afraid. They did not touch the animal. They were afraid of the animal. But finally, by the years, the animal died by itself because of the age. And only when he was dead, now the natives came and killed, destroyed his bones, put the broken bones in these gigantic sarcophaguses and closed the sarcophaguses with a gigantic lid of 40 tons. The reason was these animals should never be reborn again, because in Old Egypt they believed that every form of life will be reborn again, but not these mixed creatures. They should never return to Earth. That's why they made these gigantic sarcophaguses.
It's really fascinating because, I remember you talking about reincarnation and how important it was to keep the body intact because they believed they were going to reoccupy it. So to find these animals with these broken bones was definitely a sign that whatever they were, they definitely did not want them around again.
Yes.
So should we take Egyptian imagery, they have a lot of reptilian mixed with human characteristics. Are those the same type of beings?
I think, yes. These were all experiments made by the extraterrestrials. They made experiments with different form of animals because they used it on another planet.
I read throughout the years so many different things, but one of the things that I've encountered recently is a lot of people talk about the pineal gland and
about what?
The pineal gland.
What is that?
That is the gland in the brain that produces DMT. And, which is a chemical that our brain produces when we sleep. People ingest it in the form of ayahuasca in old Latin American civilizations. And the people that have taken this claim to have had these, encounters with gods or even aliens.
I just want to say, Zirbeldrüse steht auf dem Internet.
Zirbeldrüse. Now, okay. I understand the word.
Okay.
Yeah, I understand the word.
Okay.
But I have not much to say to this because I never studied this kind of things concerning the brain and Zirbeldrüse. I never studied it. But I know we have in our brain, we have information. And information means back for thousands of years. Whatever our forefathers one felt, spoke, said is inside of us. And sometimes if you take a drug, you go into this information thousands of years back. So I'm not astonished if someone may see extraterrestrials or have a contact with extraterrestrials.
Wow, that is a very insightful.
So do you believe that information is, we are born with it imprinted in our minds, and that possibly that's the remaining, 90% that we're not tapping into? Yeah.
But it's much more complicated to this, really. I cannot explain this on the radio.
Sure, yeah.
You see, we have our DNA, and the DNA is composed finally of atoms. But the atoms have subatomic particles, like electrons, protons, etc. And the electron is one of the subatomic particles which loses nothing or forgets nothing. Everything what humans ever did, felt, smoked, spoke, is coded in the electrons. And electrons are part of the atoms. Atoms, again, are part of the DNA, etc. So we have all the knowledge in our past inside of us. But now we have a protecting device. We have a consciousness and we have a subconsciousness. And all these things are stored in the subconsciousness. If it would be in the consciousness, we would simply become crazy. Because then we would hear voices in us. We become schizophrenic or whatever. So the subconsciousness stores these things, and with some of the drugs, it might be that you have access to it. By the way, just a personal remark, I never in my life took any drug. I never smoked a marijuana cigarette, nor did I take any kind of drug.
Thank you for that, because it's a very valid point, which I had not considered. Going back to Egypt, we have the pyramid that had these long shafts, and I remember as a kid watching one of I think it was the first time they sent a small robot through one of these shafts, and they encountered the first barrier.
I think you mean the Cheops pyramid, right?
Yeah. Thank you. And after, some time they made another robot and they managed to get through the first barrier only to find a second barrier. And after that, they found a strange small room with some interesting characteristics. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. You see, official Egyptology says that it was a pharaoh with the name of Cheops who was the constructor of the Great Pyramid. Cheops was a man of the 4th dynasty, more or less 2,500 years before Christ. So theoretically, it is possible that Cheops made the building, because it is possible to move stones around, even heavy stone blocks, etc. But now we found inside the Great Pyramids different new shafts and different new rooms. And these were localized only because of electromagnetic measurements. Now, as you mentioned before, one robot was entering into one of these shafts for 62 meters. He came to a standstill before a little door. The next robot made a little hole on it and came to a standstill again before another door. A third robot was in there and came to a standstill, and they made a hole through the third door, and there was a small room with red characters which were not hieroglyphics. Wow. If it would have been made in Cheops times, the writing should be hieroglyphics. But these red sort of writings are not hieroglyphics. Now I said, in Cheops time, it was theoretically possible to move the stone blocks around. But what was not possible is the engineering. As more and more, as we find shafts and rooms in the Great Pyramid, and then there are more than the one I just mentioned, as more complicated becomes the engineering work. Engineering work means planning, making designs before you start digging out, before you start moving the stone block. And Cheops and his fourth dynasty, they simply were just coming out of Stone Age. They were iron at that time, maybe copper, but that's all. But they were not able to make the planning. Now the funny thing is, old Arabian historians, which nobody knows in the West, it is up to me to know it because it's my specialty. Old Arabian historians like Ibrahim Abdul al-Mas'udi or al-Makrizi, they wrote, the Great Pyramid was constructed before the Great Flood by a ruler. His name was Saurid. Then they precisely say Saurid is the same which the Hebrew community calls Enoch. No. We were talking about Enoch before. He was taught by the extraterrestrials. Before Enoch left our planet in a fiery chariot, he gave all his books to his son Methuselah and told him, keep these books for the generations after the Great Flood, because all this took place before the Great Flood. And now in our time, we find always new shafts, new rooms inside the pyramid. To me, I would not be astonished if we find some books in the Great Pyramid, books written by Enoch, which tells us what happened in that time before the Great Flood.
I remember when I was younger, and I've always been fascinated by Egyptian culture and the possible contact that they had with beings from another planet. One of the things that we talked about back then with friends of like-minded ideas was if there was ever any technology that was left inside the pyramids that maybe, whether it was the U.S. government or one of these governments with the power to go in there and just remove it. Have you found any evidence that the extraterrestrials left something behind in for example, the pyramids, and it just disappeared, like the Ark of the Covenant or something?
Well, to my knowledge, they have found nothing so far in the Great Pyramid, but this is not astonishing because until today they could only go to these shafts which are known today, where humans can go inside. I mean, shaft which is about 1 meter high, or the Great Gallery, which has a height of 8.5 meters. But the new developed shafts, found shafts, have a diameter only of about 12 centimeters. So no human can scrap in there. So it might well be that there are some objects by the extraterrestrials, but no humans had the chance to go there. These who deposited these in the past, they knew very well that only a high technological society would be able to localize these rooms. All the past generations had no chance. It's our generation to find out and to go there.
One of the things that you have said about extraterrestrials from the beginning was that they were going to return, that they were here. Yeah, they learned about us, studied us, and left, but they said they would come back. You also pointed out that not every religion can be right, thus some have to be wrong. the people who are awaiting, the return of Jesus, you show the parallels between the Christian belief and other beliefs as far as a deity that will return. And you said that they will, but that they will be extraterrestrial. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
You see, 450 years ago, the white man started to make excavations, explorations to other continents. Mm-hmm. So the Spanish came to Central America. It was Hernando Cortés. He first met Moctezuma. He was the ruler of the Aztec. Moctezuma believed that Hernando Cortés, the Spanish conqueror, was one of the long-expected gods. The same thing happened in South America. Francisco Pizarro arrived to South America, today's Peru, and the Incas believe, now God is returning. They were expecting already somebody. The same thing happens with James Cook. He was the conqueror of the South Sea, for example, Hawaii. He found Hawaii, etc., etc. Whenever the white man, for the first time, came together with so-called technological primitive cultures, the natives believe that the white men are the long-expected God. So this expectation of the return is not a Christian invention. It existed long before Christianity. And then what do we have today? I'm educated as a Catholic, and we believe that one day Jesus will return. But the Muslim society is believing that their Mahdi will return. And as we know, the Buddhist society believes that Buddha will return. Mm-hmm. The great Jewish community believes that their Messiah will return. So more or less every religion still today believes in the returning of their God or whatever it was. Now, honestly, not every religion can be right.
Right.
Some of them must be wrong. And I'm afraid they are probably all wrong. Neither Jesus, nor Buddha, nor Mahdi, nor Messiah will return. Simply extraterrestrials. And then we have what I call the shock of the gods.
Right.
That's why I suggest it's better to deal or to think about these possibilities. And you never lose the real God of religion. Never. Because God is bigger. God is the universe. God is the creation of everything. God is not extraterrestrials. Mm-hmm. Our forefathers, Stone Age people, they believed erroneously that these extraterrestrials are some gods. Of course, this is not true. Nobody is God. There is only one God, the creation of the universe.
What role does God play in this case? Is he following what we learn in the Bible, that he will not be in contact with us? It seems like he's almost standing by.
Yeah. You see, when you say, what role is he playing? Mm-hmm. You use the word he, which means you make a figure out of God. Mm-hmm. And in my belief, God is no figure. God is a spirit, a wave which we cannot explain. Mm-hmm. We can only respect it, and we have to learn to become very, very sober. We are little. We are nothing. We are like bacteria compared to what we call the spirit of the universe or God. Mm-hmm. But no one can explain God. We don't know what God is and how God came into existence. But we know that the universe exists. Mm-hmm. We know that we exist. So there must be a creation. That's what we call God.
And it's God responsible for creating, in this case, extraterrestrials.
Yes, not directly. Mm-hmm. What we have in evolution on this planet Earth is in the universe the same thing. There is a universal evolution from the creation, from the beginning, which we cannot explain. Evolution took over. It all developed in a way or another. We are part of this evolution. But evolution, again, is not coincidence. Because in evolution, you have a lot of so-called unchangeable forms. And you can do nothing against an unchangeable form. What is an unchangeable form? For example, we all know the fishes, the so-called fishes, the dolphins. Dolphins, we say they are intelligent animals. So the dolphins, they jump out of the water. And at night, they see little lights on the sky, our stars. Now let's suggest the dolphins are a scientific community. They are swimming together. They have a scientific conference, and they will ask, what are these lights out there? And someone may have the idea, maybe these are other suns, maybe there are planets around, maybe there is water, and other dolphins exist there. One day, they want to know it for sure, scientifically sure, not only speculations. So sooner or later, they have to construct an antenna. To construct an antenna means they must melt metal. To melt metal means you have to make fire. To make fire means you have to get out of the water. These are unchangeable forms. It's all evolution, but only a few sorts of these evolutionary chaos becomes intelligent as we are, and the others. It makes all a perfect sense, but we don't know the beginning. We have no idea.
Okay, and since we're nearing the end of our time here, I recall you saying, at least at one point, that, you know, obviously the extraterrestrials will return, but that they also, in fact, have returned. Could you tell us just a bit more about that?
I was for decades not the best friend of ufologists. I read many of these UFO books, and I had the chance to talk with many honest people, but more or less of them, they were believers, and they were not scientific, etc. In the meantime, I had to change my opinion. In the meantime, we have new UFO books on the market, like from Leslie Kane or from Dr. Alexander in the United States, etc. And in the meantime, we have scientists which are now retired, and they say that some decades before, they were not telling us the truth. So in the meantime, I believe that somebody is here again in our solar system and does observe us. I even received a secret UFO movie, which I will show again in Joshua 3, where you are completely baffling. So something is around which we can photograph, we can film, but we don't know what it is.
Okay.
Wow. And before we wrap up, Erich, you're going to be, as you mentioned, at Contact in the Desert out here in Joshua Tree, California from May 29th through the 31st. And I see that you're going to be doing a lecture on extraterrestrials in the ancient East, a workshop on Return of the Gods, and an intensive on impossible truths. Could you just give us a little sneak peek on what people can expect in your lectures and workshops?
You see, everyone is familiar with Nazca. Nazca is the desert in Peru. When you from the air, you see gigantic lines beneath you. You see some figures like fishes, monkeys, apes, etc. So now, in the meantime, thanks or grace to satellite photographics, we know that in other continents we have similar places than Nazca. Nazca is not unique anymore. In Saudi Arabia, in Jordania, near the Black Sea, the Lake of Aral, because of satellite photographs, I can prove that there are other deserts with Nazcas, with lines and figures. So our ancestors in the past did not only in Peru make gigantic signs, such of over-dimensional size that you can see them only from the air, but they did it in other continents of this planet too. So that's new, what I explained. And a lot of new things happen, impossible things which never should explain. But I'm afraid I don't have the English words at the moment to express myself.
It's quite all right. I know that people are going to enjoy attending your lectures and workshops at Contact in the Desert. Like I said, I was there last year, and you couldn't fit one more person in the room. There were people standing everywhere in the aisles.
Sitting on top of each other.
Seriously.
And, you know, I have an archive which really is unique. I have about 200,000 slides.
Wow.
These 200,000 slides, in the meantime, they are all on computer. So I have an extreme large amount of things to show.
Wow. Sounds amazing. It sounds like a lot of fun. Erich, your website is Däniken.com, correct?
Yes, I think so. I never look at it. So I'm 80 years old in the meantime. My brain works perfectly. But all these website things, my young people in the office do. I don't understand nothing of it.
Well, it sounds like you're doing great, and you definitely have more energy than I am, and I'm probably a fraction of your age. But Erich, thank you so much. Definitely, people check out Contact in the Desert. Erich von Daniken will be there as part of a great lineup of speakers. Erich, thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your evening, and we're grateful and humble for having you on the show.
Thank
you.
So
it was
much.
a pleasure to talk to you. Goodbye, everyone.
Take care.
Goodbye,
Bye-bye.
Erich.
Ciao.
And that was our interview with Mr. Erich von Daniken. Honestly, like I just typed in the chat room earlier, a legend in this field. I'm really, at a loss for words. It was an amazing time talking to him and asking him all these questions because, as people know, when it comes to aliens and UFOs, and then you throw in the Bible, it's just a recipe for some interesting discussion, to say the least. Mm-hmm. Now, we're going to cut to a song real quick. Or a couple of songs at least, and we're going to come back and wrap things up. I've been playing a lot of Jim Sullivan lately, on and off the air. And funny story, we were in Germany, and I had been eyeing this Jim Sullivan t-shirt that was printed for a limited time. You can't find it anywhere.
And it cost like $100,000.
The shipping alone to the US was like a ridiculous amount that I refused to pay. And ironically enough, the seller happened to be in Germany, so I made Genevieve make a German eBay account.
Well, luckily I already have like German PayPal and stuff. So
yeah, but So anyway, thank you, Genevieve, for helping me acquire.
The thrifty side of me refused to let you pay $50 for shipping. There is no way anyone should pay $50 for a t-shirt when the t-shirt itself does not cost anywhere near that.
Yeah,
much.
but honestly, like I said, it's this t-shirt apparently is out of print. So we're gonna go out with some Jim Sullivan for a few minutes, and then we're gonna come back, talk a little bit more about the interview, and wrap things up. Enjoy this one. This one is called Jerome, off of Jim Sullivan's album UFO. And again, if you don't know the story, check out the website. I think we should definitely do a quick post about it, because at least it was one of my favorite interviews, and you'll find out the mystery of Jim Sullivan and why I was willing to pay so much for a t-shirt.
A t-shirt.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to keep it PG because, as people know, we're back on iTunes, right? And we
are.
We get some, we get quite colorful.
It's embarrassing having to put explicit content on something that's about, I don't know, the moon.
Yeah, well, hey, one of my first records, or actually it was a CD. We had CDs at the time.
You way too dope sections.
I know, exactly. One of the first CDs I ever bought was NWA, and it was a controversial album, and I think it was one of the first albums that had the parental advisory sticker. So for our podcast graphic on our website, we kind of added the parental advisory sticker as a little, nod to NWA. I know it's kind of a stretch to link the two, but hey, WOTR, NWA, I'm sure you can connect it somehow. Anyways, Jim Sullivan.
Only because of the bad language, not because we rap about hoes and money.
Exactly. So anyways, Jim Sullivan, this song is called Jerome, off of his album UFO. Enjoy. We're going to be back in a few. Here we go.
West of the Rockies with Frank.
What's up, guys? This is Jorge Diaz of Paranormal Activity, The Marked Ones, and you're listening to West of the Rockies with Frank. This portion of the show is sponsored by Haunted Orange County, your premier source for all things haunted in and around OC. From haunted history ghost walks to ghost group hunting expeditions at some of SoCal's most haunted destinations. Make your fall plans early and book an upcoming tour or investigation today. Visit hauntedoc.com.
Open your mind.
And we are back for a little more West of the Rockies. I'm Frank. Thank you guys for sticking around. As always, Engineer Frank on Twitter, West of the Rockies on Facebook, Genevieve Uwe on Twitter. If you don't know how to spell that,
don't bother.
yeah, just don't even follow her. The website, WoTRradio.com. Go there, tons of cool stuff. Honestly, some of the coolest interviews that we have had on this show ever have been posted on there. Check it out. We had Jim Mars, right, who wrote the book Crossfire, The Plot to Kill Kennedy, which was the foundation for JFK. Honestly, if you haven't listened to that interview, go check it out. If you love the movie by Oliver Stone, JFK, that's one of the books that he used as a foundation. Go check that interview out. One of our other very popular interviews to this day is obviously Lynn Campbell, former Scientologist and Sea Org member. I still, we still get feedback on that interview, and people, they retweet it a lot.
You liked her haircut so much, she's now
Now she's my go-to
girl.
So, if you want to get a haircut from Lynn and maybe hear some of her, honestly, first-hand accounts, if you want to hear it straight from her, go to sheerperfection.com.
Yeah,
That's her website.
See it as a great chat while getting a haircut.
Oh, yeah. Honestly, literally one of the most interesting conversations you will have in your life. So, if you're in the LA area and want to get a cut and, tell her you heard her on the show, and she'll know exactly.
Oh, she's like the most mild-mannered and
she's amazing.
Just lovely lady. Like, honestly, I can't even imagine her getting angry. Even if she got angry, I'd be like, "Oh, you're just saying
honestly,
that."
she's amazing. One of the most lovely people that I've ever met. And Stanton Freeman is another recent interview. I mean, what can I say? The man is amazing. He's probably one of the most level-headed researchers in the field of UFOs and aliens.
You can't just start throwing names out, because then you got to mention Story Musgrave, which was one of our super great recent interviews.
It's definitely a jewel in the crown, if I may use the metaphor of
considering we just sort of crown jewels over, and I don't mean that in any sort of innuendo sort of way, because is there an innuendo here as well? Or? Yeah,
it is. It is.
Okay, I just wasn't sure whether you get royal innuendos in the US or not.
No, you do. And Tony Merlis says, I
like how seriously you said that, or maybe it's just me being able to see you. The listeners can't see you right now, but he said, yes, you do, in a very matter-of-fact way.
No, well, it's true. Tony Merlis says, I was just listening to that interview yesterday, classic. Yeah, definitely. Like I said, WoTRradio.com is where you want to go. And we're also back on iTunes, so you can subscribe. Search West of the Rockies there on iTunes. You'll see our graphic and subscribe.
Maybe you can help. I don't know. You can star and rate.
Yeah, you can add
review
stars,
and
reviews,
everything.
rate it.
Only put full stars.
Yeah, if you don't like it,
we will delete.
If you don't like it,
write.
we don't want to hear it. We're pretty bad at this. I can tell already. But yeah, a lot of cool stuff. And actually, I wanted to take some time because before we left on the trip, there was a lot of excitement over the Roswell slides, right? Which was, this story that had come out about these slides that were found in an attic of somebody's house, and they were Kodachrome slides that were dated to be around the time of 1947. I believe.
And before you say what happened, the story was that they essentially did something along the lines of a live reveal, a live viewing of them showing it to the world for the first time, which in itself for me was a massive, gigantic
red flag.
Effing red flag.
Just like all the alarms going on.
It's just like, oh, pay $50 or $35 to view this being revealed live to the world. And it's just like, sorry, what?
Yeah, I mean,
and if it's meant to be something useful to the world, like news, world news, or world, I don't know, weather reports, disaster report, anything that's world news should never, ever be charged for.
Yeah,
no.
and
not even freaking football, not even the World Cup gets charged for, and that's probably the most important thing to the world.
At the risk of sounding like Bono here for a second, we've been asked to put this show on other, platforms that charge, and I've refused. I've said no. I politely have declined. I shouldn't say refuse. I politely have declined. And I've said if I were to do that, I still would, put it up for free, whether it was on our website or iTunes or whatever. Mm-hmm. Because, I believe that, if you have some kind of information that can be useful to people, it's a very fine line, I know, between, charging and not charging and the purposes of that. But I don't feel that we should be charging for anything. So when I began to hear about this story and that they were going to do like this live reveal and they were selling tickets, it was going to take place in Mexico City. Yeah, I agree that it made me kind of wonder, like, how, is this really legitimate? I guess is the word. And turns out they did the whole thing, and they had very prominent figures there via Skype and in person. And they showed this slide that appeared to be a small humanoid shape. And it only took, I think, about a day or two before, someone with Photoshop skills to go in there. It had a plaque in the front that was blurred out and it had some writing. And they were able to de-blur it. You can do some amazing things with Photoshop, which I can't even do. I can barely post a picture on Instagram.
It's like
needless to say,
Brighton effect filter.
Yeah, sharpen,
done.
and go to hef, pick the hef's
it's like
filter.
Is that not how you do Photoshop? No.
But anyways, they found that it was actually that plaque in the front said that it was the body of a young boy, a mummified body of a young boy, and it turns out that it was a picture of some kind of museum display, and they even tracked down the museum. Based just on some of like the things that were shown in that slide, and some of these, again, prominent figures in the field had to detract their statements, because they put their name behind it. They said, there's absolute evidence of aliens and that something crashed at Roswell. It's just an example of how careful you have to be when you hear about this information, because it reminded me of, in the 90s, we had the alien autopsy video. And at the time, it seemed like a convincing thing. I was a kid when it came out. And, as a kid, fascinated with this topic, I wanted to believe, to quote Mulder, X-Files coming back, just announced, January 2016, don't miss it. To quote Mulder, I want to believe, that famous poster he had in his, in the TV show. I wanted to believe that it was real. Again, it's just a cautionary tale that you have to always have your BS detector on, as we've said before on this show. A lot of things get put out there. And honestly, I want to believe, again, that the people that put on this whole event, they meant well. They talked to the main organizer and they asked him, why was he charging? And he said that it was just to cover the fees to, make this press conference happen. And he claims that, he barely, if that could be the term, he barely cut even as far as like expenses. He didn't make much of a profit. But, again, and that's something we do on this show, we put a lot of information out and we dissect it and we run it through our filters, not to tell people what to believe, but just to give people a point of view that could help them, reach their own decisions as to some of the information presented here, because it's a lot of stuff that we covered. So with the Roswell slides, unfortunately, it wasn't an alien body. It's happened again. It's not the first time that we encounter some kind of evidence that some people believe to be definite proof of aliens, and it turns out that it's not. That being said, you heard an amazing interview with Mr. Erich von Daniken. And
you did.
Honestly, what can I say? his books are amazing. I am most familiar with Chariots of the Gods. I know like I said, my dad had tons of his books. If you missed any part of it, we're going to be posting it on the website ASAP this week so that people can enjoy it. Again, one of my all-time favorite interviews, and we hope people enjoyed it. I see by the comments in the chat by Ms. Becky B, Professor Madness, Sonny Merlo, they enjoyed it. And this is why we do it, because we enjoy bringing these kind of topics and information to people. So definitely check out the website, WoTRradio.com. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, tell your friends, and we'll try to continue having these amazing guests and amazing topics and some funny stuff here and there for everyone to enjoy, as well as the amazing tunes. And speaking of tunes, I'm going to go out with a song that actually Genevieve played during her show, No Added Flavors, which I guess was in a short hiatus while we were gone as well. Genevieve, you actually played this song, despite of how you may feel about Nirvana and Kurt Cobain. You played this song, I believe, like the week before we went on this trip. And honestly, I forgot about this song, and it's one of my favorite songs, and it's amazing how I totally forgot about it. It's from the Unplug album. If anything, it's a testament as to why you should listen to No Added Flavors Thursday nights at 9 p.m. here on the Independent FM, because you will either discover music or rediscover music, and this is a perfect example of that. This is Nirvana Unplugged doing Where Did You Sleep Last Night by Leadbelly, if I'm not mistaken. It's a cover. And it's just Kurt Cobain at its rawest. So enjoy.
One of the very, very few that Nirvana ever did.
Yep.
One of the only two that I can think of off the top of my head. I think we had this discussion.
Yeah.
So if you can think of a third one that's not Man Who Sold the World or this one.
Love Bus.
Three. Okay. But I really can't think of.
And I think Incesticide was all B-sides and covers.
Okay, there's an entire album out there, but of the mainstream ones.
Of the ones that made it to the albums, I suppose.
Yeah.
This is one of them. Amazing song. Enjoy it. Listen to it. Just let it take you to that place. This is Where Did You Sleep Last Night? I'm Frank. Genevieve is here. Thank you guys for sticking around. We hope you enjoy the show. As always, Internet Frank on Twitter, West of the Rockies on Facebook. WOTR Radio is the website. WOTR Radio is on Twitter, and Genevieve Uway on Twitter. Enjoy this jam. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Honey.
West of the Rockies with Frank the Engineer on the Independent FM, Los Angeles.